Welcome. In the last session, I was discussing about adaptations in organisms. We'll continue these adaptations in organisms in this session. So, in the last session, I have discussed a few adaptations on the organisms, like we have seen how the kangaroo rat is able to live in desertic conditions, and then the plants, how they are able to live in desert conditions, means completely dry conditions with less or no water, right? And we have seen the presence of thick cuticle, then the cam pathway in those plants that adopted to conserve water. Now the next one we'll see mammals in colder climatic conditions. Mammals in colder climatic conditions. Now the mammals in the colder climatic conditions, they have shorter ears and limbs. So shorter ears and shorter limbs. Okay, so I told you in the last session the heat loss or heat gain is the function of surface area. Now if there is a larger surface area, then there is a quick loss of the heat. Now the animals who live in the desertic conditions, they need to reduce the surface area. So hence, okay, in case of animals like this Arctic fox. In case of this Arctic fox, we see that there is okay, shorter ears. They have shorter ears and they also have the shorter limbs. So this will reduce the surface area. So due to presence of these shorter ears and shorter limbs, it reduces surface area. Okay, and that in turn reduces heat loss. So that in turn reduces the heat loss. That's what we see in case of mammals in the colder climatic conditions, like this Arctic fox, that have shorter ears and limbs. And this kind of adaptation is called Allen's rule. Okay, so a person have observed this, and okay, in his honor it was named as Allen's rule. Then even in case of aquatic organisms, in aquatic animals, right, they have a thick layer of fat below the skin. They have thick layer of fat below the skin, and that thick layer of fat below the skin is called blubber. The thick layer of fat below the skin is called blubber. So here this layer of fat acts as an insulator. So this layer of fat act as insulator. So it will not allow the loss of heat. Of course, the thinner the fat layer it is, the more the heat loss takes place. So hence animals, to conserve the heat in their body, especially the animals living in the colder climatic conditions, they right, develop a lot of fat below the skin, so that it prevents the loss of heat from the body. Okay, so this is another adaptation to prevent the heat loss. Then next, when coming to some physiological adaptations, so let's see some physiological adaptations. So when we see these physiological adaptations, we'll take example of human beings. And when human beings, okay, climb to greater altitudes, when they move from lower plains to high altitudes, so humans moving from lower plains to higher altitudes, so moving from lower plains to higher altitudes. So in that case, okay, they need to show a lot of physiological adaptations. So say suppose moving to high altitudes like Rotang Pass. So there is higher altitudes like Rotang Pass, okay, near Manali. Okay, so that is a location in Himalayas. Okay, so when persons move from the lower plains to higher altitudes, okay, like this Rohtang Pass near Manali and even Leh, okay, so these are very high altitude regions. Say they are around 3,500 meters high. So they are about 3,500 meters height here. Okay, so this is what the plains. So when we see here, this is the height, okay, and this is the plane. From this region they are moving, and this is greater than 3,500 meters height. 3,500 meters high. So when people move from these lower regions to higher regions, there will be a lot of changes that take place inside their body. So now when they move from these lower regions to higher regions, so this is the height of the mountain here, what they show, they will be showing altitude sickness. They show altitude sickness. So when they move to these higher regions, they show altitude sickness here. Okay, and this altitude sickness will be having some symptoms. The altitude sickness symptoms will be including the fatigueness. The looks like the person become very tired, and then we also see the person will be showing nausea. So it is a sensation of vomiting. So always vomiting. So we usually in most of the cases I say vomiting is preceded by nausea conditions. Okay, so the person will show fatigue and nausea, and then the person also show heart palpitations. They also show heart palpitations. Now what we mean by these heart palpitations, the heart palpitations means it looks like you will be hearing your own heart sound, and looks like the heart is missing its beat. Okay, somewhat like this you will hear your own heart, okay, racing, and that is what we call the heart palpitation. So these are the symptoms that we see when a person moves from, okay, lower region to a higher altitude regions. Okay, say suppose around this 3,500 meters, which are like this Rohtang Pass near Manali and Leh. Now why such conditions we see, okay, when we move from lower to higher altitudes here. So as we move from lower to higher altitudes, okay, what happens is the pressure decreases. The pressure decreases. Okay, and of course when you are on the plains, the pressure is more. As you move up to high altitudes, you see that the pressure decreases. Now what happens is, it's the pressure that's very important, okay, where the oxygen binds with the hemoglobin. If pressure decreases, then the binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin decreases. Okay, so if pressure decreases, binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin decreases. So hence what happens is the person will be having low oxygen levels. So because of this, the person who moved to high altitude will have low levels of oxygen, and that low levels of oxygen will cause symptoms like this. So altitude sickness, these are symptoms for them. Okay, so the person will show symptoms like that: fatigue, nausea and heart palpitations, because of these low levels of oxygen present in their body. Now, uh, the body, of course, starts adapting to that high altitude conditions. It will take some time. So the point is that this will happen when a person moves very quickly from the lower region to higher altitudes. But if a person goes to that higher altitudes, okay, taking at several steps the rest, and by the time he goes to the top of it, the body may get almost adjusted, and in that case the symptoms may be very much less. But when the person moves very quickly to high altitudes, the situation will be in this way. So they will obviously have altitude sickness, and the on the high altitudes the pressure is less. Because of that, the binding capacity of oxygen with the hemoglobin decreases, and that results in having less oxygen level, oxygen in the body. Now for this, the body starts adjusting to the high altitude conditions. So what are those adapting conditions we see in people who have moved to high altitudes? Okay, so now let's look at, in that case, the adaptations we'll see. So in that person, the RBC production increases. So in them, the RBC production increases, and also the breathing rate increases. So here it tries to compensate the oxygen levels in the body by, okay, these physiological adaptations. So there will be the increase in the RBC production, and there will be also the breathing rate increases. So both of these conditions will try to bring back the oxygen levels in the body. So this is what happens, okay, in case of a person moving to high altitudes and getting with this problem, altitude sickness. Next, in many animals, the physiological functions will take place in narrow range of temperature. So let's see, in case of most animals, the metabolic reactions and all the physiological functions, so the metabolic reactions and all these physiological functions, we know all these metabolic reactions are catalyzed by enzymes, and enzymes are very much affected by temperature. So we have studied, okay, the enzyme kinematics in the chapter biomolecules, where as the temperature increases, the enzyme activity also increases, but it is not infinite. So as it goes on increase in the temperature, the enzyme activity will also go on increasing, but that will not be the case. It has some limitations. So say suppose only up to 40 degrees Celsius it happens, and after that, even though if temperature increases, the enzyme activity will not increase, but in fact its activity will decrease. Okay, so here these metabolic reactions and physiological functions of in most of the animals, they will be proceeded in optimally narrow temperature range. So they all occur in narrow temperature range. So let's say in case of human beings, so when we take humans, so this takes place say around 37 degrees Celsius. So already I have told our optimum temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. So at 37 degrees Celsius, the metabolic activities, whatever taking place in the body, will be at their maximum. Okay, and when coming to certain kind of microbes, in that microbes the optimum temperature is very high. So these microbes, especially when I say about archaea bacteria, okay, archaeobacteria, so which live in very harsh environments here, and okay, the organisms in deep sea hydrothermal vents, in deep sea hydrothermal vents, of course the archaeobacteria in hot springs in those waters, and in deep sea hydrothermal vents. So the organisms living in these locations, the microbes in deep sea hydrothermal vents and the archaeobacteria in, okay, I'll just mention something like this. So archaeobacteria in hot springs, okay, and the in deep sea hydrothermal vents. So whatever, so these microbes, so these microbes in hydrothermal vents and hot springs, their optimum temperature, it will be exceeding 100 degrees Celsius. So in this case, they live at greater than 100 degrees Celsius. So their metabolic activities and physiological functions will take place normally right at that 100 degrees Celsius temperature, right? Then we also see there are fishes that live in Antarctic waters where the temperatures are sub-zero conditions, okay, and of course there are fishes that live very deep in the oceans. So fishes, okay, living in Antarctic region, Antarctic region, and okay, here I'm just taking examples of fishes. You can take any other animals or the organisms that live in the Antarctic region, or the organisms that live in deep oceans. So fishes living in deep oceans. Now the fishes living in deep oceans, we know as we move from the surface of the water into the deep oceans, the pressure increases, a lot of pressure that no human is able to survive, okay, or in fact any other animal, if it suddenly moves to that depth, then it will get crushed. So that much pressures will be there, okay, as or someone moves into deep oceans. But even then, okay, we cannot say that at that pressures or at that temperatures no organism is able to live. No, there are organisms, certain kind of organisms which have adapted to those environmental conditions and are able to live in that, sub-zero conditions, that is Antarctic region, where the temperatures will go beyond, what I say, uh, minus 10 degrees, minus 20 degrees Celsius. And we also see the fishes living in the deep oceans, okay, where they are capable of withstanding very high, pressures, right? And that is possible because of they have biochemical adaptations. They have biochemical adaptations. Now the next one, uh, we see some organisms, like in case of lizards, okay. So these lizards, which belong to the group reptiles, they are not able to control their body temperature, as the ambient temperature means the temperature surrounding them, when it increases, right, their body temperature also raises. Now when the climate so is very cool, so in the night time, in the desert areas and in some parts of the, a place, the nights are very very cooler and days are very hotter by the time it comes to the afternoon. Now point is that the organisms that are able to survive in the night times, okay, the moment the sun comes, they like to come out and then start basking in the sun. So till their body temperature comes to, what you say, certain their normal body temperature, so whatever the best temperature they feel comfortable, so they will be basking until that temperature is reached, Okay, and if the temperatures become hotter, means if they notice that their body temperature is getting overheated, then they will be moving away from that hot condition or from the sun, and they seek cooler locations, right? And of course, in case of those deserts, the animals seek a little cooler locations by burrowing, okay, into the sand, right? So that's all about the adaptations in the organisms. Now let's look at the next one, populations. So the next one, populations. So what actually these populations are? So I told you population includes the individuals of only one species. So you cannot say that okay, some members of donkey, some members of monkey, and some members of human beings, all you bring together and say it is a population. That will be wrong. A population will include only the individuals of that particular species. So when I say human population, it includes only humans. So nothing or no other species need to be included. Now, so a population, so with that I say the individuals of a species. So the population constitute individuals of a species, and those populations they live in groups. Okay, the individuals all they come together and live in groups and in a well defined geographical area. So the populations are adapted to different geographical areas. So they may be living in a well-defined geographical area, and they are going to share or compete for same or similar resources. For similar resources. So they are going to share or compete for similar resources, and they also show okay interbreeding among them. So we will also see okay the interbreeding among them means only the individuals of that species are able to interbreed among themselves. So if one species, okay, say the individual of one group is able to reproduce with another group, then we cannot say they are different species. So I think as we have not studied the evolution, the definition of the species you might be not knowing it properly, but the point is that when we need to say a particular group of organisms are a different species, when they are reproductively isolated. So when they are reproductively isolated, in nature they are not going to reproduce with some other individual. So in that case, that group is a different species. Okay, anyway, that part we'll understand it later, but now we'll try to understand what is a population. So a population is a one that will be having individuals of a species. They live in groups and in a well-defined geographical area. They share or compete okay for similar resources and interbreed okay among themselves. So these are all the features of a population, right? Now don't think that the offspring that is obtained from sexual reproduction is only called population, but the point is that individuals okay formed from sexual reproduction, and also individuals formed from asexual reproduction. So both of them, in that case, we will be using the word population. Okay. So here, many of think that only the individuals that resulted from the sexual reproduction we need to consider them as a population, but not. So even the individuals that resulted from asexual reproduction also, okay, we will consider them as population, especially in the ecological studies we use in this way. So I say that the individuals from the sexual reproduction and also the individuals that formed from asexual reproduction are going to constitute a population, right? So now let's understand. I mean, I think already we understood what actually the population is. Now let's see examples of populations. So some examples of populations, right? So in this case, the cormorants in a wetland, cormorants in a wetland will constitute a population. Okay, so they are aquatic birds. So they are a type of birds, cormorants. Okay, then rats. Okay, so rats in an abandoned dwelling means leftover house, so where no people are living, so that is a abandoned dwelling here. Then teak wood trees in a forest, teak wood trees in a forest, they also form a population. The rats in abandoned dwelling is a population. Cormorants in a wetland, they are also population. Then the bacteria in a culture plate, the bacteria in a culture plate is also a population. Then lotus plants in a pond, they also constitute a population. So cormorants in a wetland, all these, the bacteria in a culture plate, the lotus in a pond, all of them will constitute a population. Now let's look at the attributes of a population. Now, when there are individuals, when you are considering only an individual may have a birth and death. But when we are talking about population, so population is a group of individuals belonging to a particular species, right? But coming to this population, so let's look at these attributes of population. So for a population, there will be something called birth rates and death rates. So there will be birth rates and death rates. So I told you, when we consider single individual, then the person will be having either birth or death, not the rates. But in this case, whenever we talk about population, they are going to have birth rate and death rates. Now let's look at this birth rate. So how to calculate these birth rates of a population? Say in a pond there are 20 lotus plant, okay, plants. In a pond there are 20 lotus plants. There are 20 lotus plants, and okay, there were new plants added. So say 8 new lotus plants were added. So this brings a total number to 28. So 28 is the total population. So the birth rate we need to calculate by the number of new lotus plants added by the lotus plants that are already present. So that will be 8 by 20. So that will be 8 by 20, and this will give zero point 0.4 offsprings, means new lotus plants. So zero point 0.4 offspring per lotus per year is added. So this is how we are going to calculate the birth rates of a population. And coming to the death rates, so let's look at the death rate to calculate. Now say suppose in a lab there are 40 fruit flies. In a lab there are 40 fruit flies. There are 40 fruit flies, and 4 died, say in a period of time. In that period you can take, okay, days, in hours. You can take it in week or months. So here I will take in week. So died in a week. So there are 40 fruit flies, out of which 4 died in a week. So hence the death rate will be the number of those organisms that died in a particular period of time by the total number of the fruit flies that existed. So 4 by 40, and that gives, okay, zero point 0.1 individual. So it will be zero point 0.1 individual, okay, per fruit fly per week is the death rate. So that one is considered as the death rate, right? So that's one attribute of the population, the birth rates and death rates. And another attribute of the population is sex ratio. Means how many males are present, okay, per female, or vice versa, we need to calculate. Okay, say suppose in a population there are 60% of female population, 60% of female population, okay, and then 40% of male population. So 60% of female population and 40% of male population. So this is how we calculate the sex ratios, okay, right, in case of a population. Now a population at any given time, will be having individuals with various age groups. So a population at any given time have individuals of various age groups. So a population at any given time, they are going to have individuals of various age groups. So say suppose they are going to have pre-reproductive age group. So pre-reproductive age group individuals means these are children below the puberty age. Of course, that is children, right, who did not come to the maturation. Then the next will be the reproductive age group individuals, and there will be even post-reproductive age group individuals. Right, so mainly we see three types of individuals, okay, with that age groups. So this is the pre-reproductive age group individuals, means who did not come to the reproductive age, and the reproductive age group individuals, which mean they have come to the reproductive stage. Say suppose in case of females, they come to the reproductive age say around 12 years, and from 12 years to a period of 45 to 50 years, they will be in reproductive age group. So they will be in a phase of reproduction. So once that is completed, then they stop reproducing after an age of 50, say suppose. Then thereafter those individuals will be called the post reproductive age group individuals. So basing on this, okay, we have obtained three types of what I say, the graphical representation for this. They are called age pyramids. So I'm going to discuss about those age pyramids. So when we consider these three age group individuals in a population, okay, and try to make a graph, then those are called the age groups. I'm sorry, I mean age pyramids. Okay, so here there are three types. We'll see one, the stabilizing, right, say growing population. So growing population, then stabilizing population, and third one, declining population. So we are going to see, okay, three types of populations depending on the individuals in the uh, population. So this growing population, I can also say expanding population. So expanding population. So growing population or expanding population, stabilizing population and declining population. So here in a growing population, there will be more number of pre-reproductive age group individuals. Okay, in case of stabilizing population, almost all the three groups of individuals will be almost similar in number, whereas the declining population, in them there will be more number of post reproductive age group individuals. So now let us see those diagrams that represent these age groups. So first one, the growing population. Growing population. So in growing population, I told you that there are more number of, okay, pre-reproductive age group individuals. So there are more number of pre-reproductive age group individuals. And then when coming to, okay, the reproductive age group individuals will be smaller in number when compared to the pre-reproductive age group individuals. And lastly, when we see here the post-reproductive age group individuals will be much lesser in number. So this is it gives an upright pyramid like, and that's what we say a growing population. So it's a triangular pyramid what we get, and it's a growing population. So that indicates a growing population. Now coming to the stabilizing population. So in case of this stabilizing population, or I say stable population. Okay, so in that case, the pre-reproductive age group individuals, and then the reproductive age group individuals, and the post-reproductive age group individuals will be almost right, will be seen in the similar way here. So almost they will be right, same in number, so that's just means plus or minus you can take in the case, but similar, I mean the post reproductive individuals and the pre reproductive individuals will be almost similar in the condition. So it's a stabilizing population. Then coming to the third one, the declining population. So in case of declining population, you will see the pre-reproductive age group individuals very small in number, will be small in number. So this is the pre-reproductive age group individuals, and these are reproductive age group individuals, and these are post reproductive age group individuals. You can see that the older individuals are more in number. So if older individuals are more in number, then that is a obviously declining population. If the population is having more number of pre-reproductive age group individuals, then it will be a expanding population or a growing population. So this you can take it as expanding population or growing population. Right, so with this I will end today's session. So we will see a few more properties of this population in the next session, and we'll also see population growth in the next session.